Okay, so we're going to be going over, you have a project in Unit 3 that's called Symbiosis. And I'm just going to briefly go over a little bit about the project itself and then give you a little insight onto the three types of symbiosis that there are. Symbiosis is nothing more than just a relationship or an interaction between two different species. And so, you can see on just this slide that there are three different types. So obviously, when we're talking about that relationship, there are differences, different types of relationships that can be had. And so your project, they're going to give you, I think there's like six different examples that you can pick from. And you only have to pick one, and they ask you to look at the two species that they give, and then they want you to tell which type of symbiosis is it that you're seeing exhibited in those two particular species. Is it mutualism? Is it commensalism? Or is it parasitism? So it asks you to write 150 words, which if you really think about it is not really that long. Sounds a little overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, 150 words, but really if you kind of think that a sentence is only about 10 words, on the average, that really it's only about 15 sentences. So get those sentences there's not really a large number of them to be that are needed, and just have them fact filled. Get your information across to your reader, which is me, and some facts that are just good for your learning. So let's go through the what symbiosis is. Again, I told you earlier when we just started that it's a relationship or an interaction between two or more different species. So let's go ahead and break them down and talk about each one quickly here and individually here so that you have a good feel for them, what they are. Let me move on to the next slide. So mutualism here, you can see that the root in that word mutualism would be mutual, and usually if we think of something that's mutual, we're kind of helping each other back and forth. It's mutual. I help you, maybe you help me. Well, in that word mutualism, that's you're going to see pretty much the same thing. In mutualism, you see where both of the species benefit from the relationship that they have. And a great example of this would be a bee and flower. The bee, can actually gets pollen, it gets nectar from a flower, so it's getting food from the flower. But then the bee has little hairs on its body and it picks up pollen, and as the bee is flying from flower to flower, it's actually transferring or carrying that pollen from one flower to another, and so can be involved in pollination of that other flower. So the flower benefits, the bee benefits. So that's mutualism. And another good example is, we've all seen that movie, Finding Nemo. That's a clownfish down here. Well, clownfish are oftentimes found in and around sea anemones, and there's a mutualistic benefit going on there too, where that clownfish is actually feeding, so he's getting some food by eating little invertebrates that are actually growing on the sea anemone. So he gets the food from that. And then also the sea anemone is benefiting because the little invertebrates that can grow on the sea anemone can be harmful to the sea anemone. And so as the clownfish is eating those off, it benefits the sea anemone, benefits the clownfish. And also another kind of interesting fact, there's really more than one benefit here for, sometimes there are more than one benefit for the organisms involved. The clownfish actually, when he poops or has the fecal material, that material is actually, it provides nutrients for the sea anemone. So there's several benefits that are going on here as the clownfish and the anemone have this relationship together. So that is an example of mutualism. So as you can see here, mutualism is that symbiotic relationship, because all three of the examples are going to be symbiotic. That means there's just a relationship or an interaction there. So it's going to be between individuals of different species in which both individuals benefit from the association. In this case, certainly the bee and the flower benefited, and down below the sea anemone and the clownfish benefited. So the perfect examples of mutualism. Then we're going to go on to the second one, commensalism. This is, another type of symbiotic relationship, which is an interaction, remember, between different species. In this case, though, one of the organisms benefits. The other, there's no benefit, but it doesn't harm that particular organism either. So only one is going to benefit, but on the other organism, no benefit, but no harm either. And a perfect example of this is a remora fish on a shark. The remora fish, they actually have little suckers on their fins, and they can actually attach to the shark body. Now, and you can see some pictures here. That red arrow points to one that's attached, and then over here in the upper right hand corner, you can see that it looks like there might be one or two or three that are either attached or becoming attached to another shark. And so what this affords the remora fish is that it obviously would get protection, because not too many things will have very much to do with a shark. They're kind of one of the kings of the ocean. And so it affords the remora fish protection, maybe that they're not going to be fed upon by some other bigger fish. It gives them some transportation. So as a shark is swimming to different areas of the ocean, the remora fish can kind of tag along. Doesn't even have to exert much energy at all, and then it can unhook in another area where there's possibly new feeding opportunities. So this little remora fish gets protection, it gets transportation, and another thing that it can sometimes get too is, as the shark is feeding, the scraps that are left, the remora fish can pick up on them and can eat the scraps that are left from the shark. So three things really the remora fish can actually use or obtain from the shark. So transportation, protection, food. So that's commensalism benefiting the remora fish, but the shark doesn't really get a benefit from the remora fish being attached to it. No benefit there for the shark, but it also doesn't harm the shark. So that fits the perfect, that's a perfect example of what commensalism is, where one of the species benefits, but the other one doesn't, but it's also not harmed. Another good example would be a whale with barnacles on it. Now, the picture here shows barnacles on the tail, but the barnacles can be anywhere on the body, anywhere on the shark. And so the benefit for the barnacles is that as the whale is swimming, the barnacles need to have flowing current going by to be able to pick out food for themselves. And so all this current is going by as they're attached to the whale, and the whale is swimming around. So a lot more feeding opportunities for the barnacles on a moving whale there. Now the whale, since this is an example of commensalism, remember one of the species benefits. So in this case the barnacles are benefiting, but the whale doesn't really get a benefit from the barnacles being attached to it. But there's also no harm done to the whale, as far as they can tell, from the barnacles being attached. So a perfect example again of commensalism, where one of the species benefits and the other one no benefit but no harm. Now the third one is going to be parasitism. Now in this case, by definition, the one of the two species that's involved in this interaction with another is going to benefit, but the other is going to be harmed. Remember, in the commensalism, one benefits, but the second one no harm. So in this one, though, parasitism, one benefits, but the other species is harmed. And certainly head lice, we know head lice are involved in a relationship or an interaction with us humans. And so the head lice benefit by drinking the blood, by feeding on the humans. And obviously, we know that we would be harmed by the head lice. They're, first of all, they're in our hair, they itch, they're drinking blood. So certainly we're harmed by having the head lice. But even though they're benefiting from being there on our head. And so I have the picture on the left there is the eggs that the head lice lay. So there's another bad thing that we get from lice. We have all these can have all these nits in our hair if we have head lice, and you usually find them closer to the root, or especially even toward the back of the neck. A lot of times you'll find nits, and as the hair grows out, if the knit will stay on the hair shaft. And if you see knits that are on the hair shaft further out, those are usually older knits. They're not the fresh knits that have just been laid. So, many bad things occur to us by having those head lice in our hair, but it certainly does benefit the lice being there because they use us for feeding, reproduction, that type of thing. Now, a tick is another example of parasitism where ticks will burrow into us, into humans, and they carry a bacteria which is called Borrelia, and that bacteria can actually cause Lyme disease if that tick is carrying that bacteria. Now, ticks don't itch as much. The head lice usually itch. Ticks don't itch as much as lice do. So sometimes if it's just a smaller tick or if it's earlier in the life stage of a tick, they're small and they can be like only maybe 1 millimeter long. And they can get in the groin area, they can get in the axilla, underneath your arms. And if you can't see them and they don't really itch, you may not know they're there and may not, take them out. Usually if they're bigger, you can see them, you can feel them as you check your body over, and you can find them so you can remove them. So it's generally the smaller ticks that they find are transmitting the bacteria because we don't know that they're there. And it usually takes about 36 to 48 hours for a tick to transmit the bacteria. So if you don't know it's there and that time period goes by and that tick happens to be carrying that bacteria, then you can have a chance of getting that Lyme disease. So, you can see the red area starting to develop there. A lot of times with that Lyme disease, it'll develop into like a bullseye rash. It can be very harmful if it gets in around where the spinal cord is. You can get meningitis. It can cause joint pain, joint swelling. It's just not a good thing. And I'm sure probably most of you have heard of Lyme disease before, because there are some ticks here in Idaho too that the potential is there for them to be carrying that particular bacteria, such that if you get bit, it can transmit that bacteria that causes Lyme disease to a human. So again, this is a good example. Both of these are examples of parasitism, where one of the species that's in an interaction with another benefits and the other one does not. So I hope this helps as far as your project, and this should help with understanding the 3 types of symbiotic relationships that organisms can have, two different species can have. Remember the mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. Know what they are and some examples of them for your quizzes or tests, so it should help in that regard too, as well as helping you do your project. And remember, when you're done watching this, to get your points for watching this video, you need to give me a call. It's never a quiz, but I will ask you, some questions on it just to make sure that you understand the differences between the 3 types of symbiosis that you might find. So thanks for watching, and I hope this helped. Bye-bye.